Hello and welcome to the program, Triggering the Unconscious Mind for Unthinkable ROI. On behalf of Aurora Training Advantage, I would like to thank you for joining us. Your guest speaker today is Jeanette McMurtry. Jeanette is a global authority, columnist, and keynote speaker on consumer psychology and emotionally based marketing strategies for businesses across all industries. Her approach of building emotional selling propositions for brands in all industries has not only made her a marketing thought leader, it has achieved unthinkable ROI. Questions can be entered in a control panel, and as many as possible will be answered at the end of the presentation. Enjoy the program.
Thank you so much. It's an honor to be here, and I appreciate the invitation to speak on behalf of Aurora Training Advantage. And welcome to everybody on the class today. I've noticed that you all come from some great industries and companies, and we have a pretty diverse representation of marketing fields today. So what I'd like you to do is, as we go along in our session today, please feel free to use your chat bar, ask questions, let me know if I'm going too fast or if there's something that you didn't understand. And let's make this an interactive discussion. We have a small group today, and that gives us the opportunity to really chat and kind of discuss some of these concepts I'm going to be presenting with you today, rather than you just listening. And I believe that we will all get more out of it if we share our questions and open up your mics and ask questions as well if you'd rather not use your chat bar. But just a little background about how I came to be an expert in psychology-based marketing. For years, I worked with Xerox, helping them to promote the power of personalization. And I was very excited about the results that we got from personalized direct marketing. I was seeing triple-digit response rates, increases in lifetime value, and pretty amazed at what was happening by just simply putting someone's name in a letter or putting someone's name in the creative application of the design. But then, like all good things, the results, the response, the impact started to diminish, and personalization became somewhat of a commodity. So I decided we needed to take this whole concept of personalized marketing to a higher level. And I threw out my marketing books and I started studying human psychology to really understand what motivates people, what attracts our attention, and how we go about processing stimuli and why we engage with some marketing campaigns and not others, why we buy what we do, and why we stay loyal. And as we go through this election process this year, I'm seeing more and more of the human psychology that I've been studying at play in terms of how people respond and think about even our politicians, not just brands. So it's a really fascinating ride to see how we engage, act, vote, and purchase based on the triggers that are so deep inside of us, most of which are driven by our unconscious mind. And I've learned some fascinating things about how we think and how we process information and how to apply those things to marketing. As a result of applying these aspects and insights to marketing, I've been able to achieve ROIs of 3,100% and response increases and revenue increases of 200 to 600%. And I'm going to share with you today the insights that I've learned by studying how we humans really process information and why we do what we do, and show you how to apply these to your marketing campaigns. I'm very excited to be here, and again, this is a lot of new information, and a lot of it is stuff you're not going to know, and I'm not expecting you to be able to take notes because I'm going to cover a lot of information and we're going to go fairly fast. So I have a white paper which I will send to each of you at the end of this session so that you can go back and review the concepts that we're discussing today, and you can also get a list of reading sources so that you can go back and read more in depth on any of the psychological principles that we'll be talking about. So before I get started, does anybody have any questions? And can everybody find their chat button on your control panel? I asked that question because it's kind of important. I'm going to be asking you questions as we go through this session today, and I'd like you to be able to respond via chat. So if you can't find your chat button, please just send a message in another way that you can, and we'll show you how to use it. But let's go ahead and get started. So first and foremost, why is it important that we start to market to the unconscious mind and really understand the psychology of human behavior. Well, you can see here, in just 1 year's time, look how loyalty has just pretty much tanked for consumer product goods. And it's not just consumer product goods. This is happening across the board, B2B and B2C brands in all industries. You can see in just 1 year's time, 52% of highly loyal customers reduced or defected for no apparent reason. 1/3 of those went to a competing brand. That's pretty scary. What I think is pretty scary here about these statistics is that only 40% of brands retained 50% of their customers year to year. That means most of us are starting over every year to rebuild almost half of our customer base. That's pretty scary. And I suspect that many of you in this class today are experiencing this kind of attrition or close to it, which is putting more and more pressure on you. And it's already pretty scary to be in marketing, because statistics show us that marketing is the one function that CEOs don't trust and don't believe really have an impact on the business. We marketers need to pay attention to some of these things and show those CEOs that they're wrong, because we have a lot to do with how businesses operate and succeed in today's market. And we're going to be much more effective if we can start to market from the psychological appeal versus the traditional marketing appeals. Another reason why we need to start marketing to the unconscious mind is look how busy our conscious mind is. And this is just one example of the many distractions that we have consciously every single moment of our day. I have a sneaky feeling that everybody in this class is guilty of just about everything on this slide. What's really scary too is that how many people have shopped while driving. But that's how we live. No matter how many times we're told, you know, focus and pay attention, be present, we can't. And most people are starting to admit that they have an addiction to their smartphone, and there are many support groups that are cropping up to help people overcome this addiction. Well, if our conscious mind is this distracted, how are we going to go about getting into the mindset of our consumer to pay attention to our messages, act on them, and engage with our brands? It doesn't happen. So, in addition to these big distractions of being on our smartphones and listening to the radio, watching TV, and doing all these things at the same time, we also have another big obstacle to overcome as marketers, and that's trust. Consumers really do not trust business anymore, and it's getting worse and worse and worse. And again, just as we go through an election process, we're seeing just how much of trust is broken on a daily basis, and it makes us skeptical in all aspects of our lives. But you can see how quickly trust can go down. If you look at the bottom of my slide, you can see that with 1 year's time, trust for banks in the U.S. went from 71% down to 25%. That's pretty scary. And I noticed that some of our attendees are in the insurance space. I don't know if you're aware of this for those of you selling insurance services, but only 32% of policyholders for insurance products trust that insurance company for who they have the policy with to actually follow through on the promises made when processing claims. That's pretty scary. So what do we need to do to build trust? Without a foundation of trust, we really cannot dive deep into the psychology of the consumer and tap into those unconscious drivers I'm going to be talking to you about today. And we build trust and we lose trust in many, many different ways. Here's just a quick example as to how trust has been broken between consumers and brands. Hopefully we don't have any Abercrombie and Fitch fans in the class today, but if we do, I apologize. But this is what they are advertising. This is actually a billboard they've had for a few years all over San Francisco, all over big cities, and you see that you have a hard time seeing the clothing that they're actually selling in this particular visual. If you look closely, you'll see it's a pair of jeans, but really what they're really trying to get you to believe here is that if you buy their jeans that you can't even see here, that roughly cost $200 and they're already ripped up, that you're going to look just like this. That's the promise that they're trying to create with their ads. But the reality is more like this. And because this is the reality, nobody trusts that brand because they're creating subliminal, unspoken promises that nobody really believes. When that happens, it trusts our ability to trust the brand in all levels, and it hurts our ability to trust business in general. For those of you who are not familiar with a group called adbusters.net, I encourage you to look that up. Their entire purpose in life is to expose advertisers that create subliminally irresponsible, unethical, and untrue types of advertising that don't create trust. You do not want your brand to be analyzed by them because they will expose pretty much any bad thing they possibly can. They're also the same group that organized the boycott Wall Street or whatever those different movements have been to try to really get people to pay attention to consumerism and speak out. They have a blackout day every single year where they encourage millions of people not to buy anything from any retailer or any brand, and they've been very, very successful at getting consumers not to trust business. So I'm going to send a little message to all of you right now, and let's see if you can see my chat. That's the source I'm telling you to go to. I think you'll find it very insightful. And if you aren't seeing my chat, just see what you can do because I'll be sending you resources along the way today. So, who do we trust? Nielsen puts together every few years a study of who we trust when it comes to advertising. And as you can see from this slide, 92% of us trust recommendations from people we know. Okay, yeah, it's where we go on Facebook, we ask our friends, would you buy a Dell or would you buy an HP computer, or do you trust AT&T or Verizon, whatever, whatever. And we really do pay attention. We have a lot of influence over each other's purchases. But what I really think is interesting here is the second line. We also trust consumer opinions posted online. 70% of us trust people we don't even know. And we believe what they have to say on Yelp and other product reviews. Unfortunately, most people don't realize that many of those consumer reviews are basically paid sabotage where a consumer or a brand is hiring someone to post a negative brand about the competition, yet we still believe them. That shows you how much we are looking for validation from pretty much anyone that's like us, consumers that are buying the same things we do and we believe them. So how do we marketers then tap into these sources that people trust and deliver our messages in a way that will enable them to believe our messages and engage with our brand? Another thing we learned from this slide is how important it is that we move away from simply just paid advertising into integrating these other kinds of forms of marketing because, as you can see, a lot of the things we used to spend money on are not trusted resources for consumers making decisions today. We also have to face the fact that we marketers have a big marketing dilemma. And this is one of the most important things that I have learned in studying human psychology, and you're going to be surprised. What we learned from neuromarketers is that 90% of all thought is unconscious. I'm going to type another name up here in our chat bar. And again, if you're not getting the chats, please email Isaac, who's on the other end of this call, and he can help you figure out how to do that. But you can see 90% of all thought is unconscious, and this is from research done by a Harvard business professor named Gerald Zaltman, who wrote a very fascinating book called How Consumers Think. And he is considered to be the father of neuromarketing, a term that many of you have probably heard of, and you may have read several books on it. Neuromarketing is just simply studying how our mind unconsciously processes stimuli. But more importantly here, if they're right, 90% of all thought is unconscious, that means that we are marketing to the wrong 10% of the human mind. Think about that. If you're marketing to the conscious mind, you're only marketing to 10% of the decision process. That's a huge waste of your resources, time, and media buys. So we've got to figure out how to create messages and marketing personas and creative that appeals to what really drives our thoughts and behaviors and engages our decision processes. And to add to the complexity of how our minds work and what we marketers need to address, Y&R did a study not too long ago to show us just how close or how far apart our conscious values are with our unconscious values.